If you're a leader, effective communication is extremely important. Are you doing some things that might be undermining your performance? Hi, I'm Ken Okel. In this virtual presentation, I'm going to go through 3 words that I am noticing a lot in public speaking, words that I don't think you need to be using. I'm going to then give you some tips on how you can avoid falling into the trap of using these 3 words. I'm a professional speaker. I talk to audiences about ways you can improve your performance on the job, and I pull from my professional background, which includes broadcast news, hurricane relief, and professional valet. Now, I know, unusual combination, but in each and every field, I had to perform at a high level every day under pressure. Many of us are aware of the public speaking usual suspects. These are things like or we've heard those. I tend to think of those as bridge words, words that we use when we're having to go from one thought to the other and we can't necessarily remember what the other thought is right away. So we just kind of say, okay, these happen, but you want to make sure that you're not using those too much. Many people have talked about those words before. I want to turn my attention to 3 that I'm hearing quite a bit. We'll go through them right now, and then I'll talk a little bit more about them as a whole. First one, well. Next, now. And then, so. I'm hearing them more and more in presentations or virtual communication. On their own, the words are not necessarily horrible. Often, they kind of signify what's next or some sort of change in a conversation. Let me give you some examples. We were in a really bad place, so we had to figure out a solution. When you find yourself in a challenging time, well, you got to figure out what you're going to do next. Now, we had to figure out what we were going to do next. See, I've used all those words in examples that I think work okay. I hear a lot of TV news reporters using them when they're live in the field and it comes back to them. They often will say, well, or now. It's almost like a word that kind of helps you get going. Some people like these words because they are conversational, and I agree with that. However, the problem is people don't just use them once. I think it's okay to use a well, now, or a so once. People fall into trouble when they start using them a lot. And I admit, I fall into this trap myself. Who knows, in this video, some of you may be writing down all of the instances where I'm using well, now, and so. Where I see the problem is in the repetition. So here, you got apples. Eat one apple. Hey, that's pretty good. But you have to eat another apple and another apple and another apple. It becomes a little too much. Often I will hear someone who I can predict how many times they're going to say, well, or so. It becomes a noticeable habit. The effectiveness is lost, and it just becomes a distraction. Really try to be aware if you're using these words, well, now, and so. You may be thinking, Ken, okay, I know I use them. What can I do about them? Okay, we're going to go through a 3-step process here. First part of it, you really have to know your material. People are often inserting these little words like well, now, and so because they're not as sure about what to say. Really know the material that you're talking about. Often as practice, can you explain it ahead of time to someone else? If you can explain something well, usually you have a really good handle on it. When we're not as sure, that's sometimes where we get into trouble. So really try to know your material. Practice your remarks. I understand sometimes you may have to speak in an impromptu manner, but if you can practice, you'll be that much better. Here's a special tip that I have for you. When you're giving a presentation, you obviously want to know all of it. Now, for me, I don't write stuff down verbatim. I know the areas where I want to talk, and I practice them. And I especially practice the first couple minutes of a presentation and the last few minutes of a presentation. When you start a presentation, you've got a lot of adrenaline in you. You might be a little nervous. Even people like me who get paid to speak, we get nervous. I want to make sure when I start off, I'm really going to have confidence in my material. I'm performing well, and I think the audience will be engaged. Same thing for the end. Sometimes speakers start to talk too much. We're not really sure how to end things. If you practice your ending, you'll have the confidence as you're speaking that you know you're going to hit the landing. So really make sure you're committing to practice. The final tip, This one is a hard one for some people. I think it's very important for you to record and review your presentations when you are talking. This can just be done with your iPhone. Just record the conversation, and then you got to listen to it later. And I know a lot of people get hung up on, I don't like the way I sound, or this isn't quite right. You want to analyze it, because very often you have patterns like the well, now, like, even, or so. Words that you're using more, and you don't notice them until you hear yourself saying it. That's when you can say, ooh, I am using these words a little too much. And as I've mentioned, I've got myself doing the same thing. It's okay if you have this problem, but if you can realize you're doing it, that's when you can make some steps to improve your public speaking, improve your effectiveness as a leader. Simple steps. It does take a commitment to improve. I urge you to take that. You want to find out more about me? My name is Ken Okel. As I mentioned, I'm a professional speaker. Shoot me an email, tvguy@kenokel.com. What's up with that? Well, years ago, when I worked in TV news, you'd be out in the field. People would recognize you. They'd want to say hi. They wouldn't remember your name. So they would just yell out things like, hey, TV guy. You can find out more about me at my website, which is my name, kenokel.com. You can watch some clips of my presentations, see my podcast, read some articles, a lot of stuff you can do there. And of course, I welcome you to connect with me on the social channels. They're all under my name, Ken Okel. If you send me a LinkedIn invitation, I'm glad to receive that. Maybe write a note in there saying how we connected, like through this presentation. Sometimes on LinkedIn, you may have noticed there might be a few people who seem more like they're interested in selling things to you than connecting with you as a person, as a professional. That way, I kind of know where you're coming from. Hope these tips will help. Let me know if you've picked up some good habits. I'm Ken Okel. Take care.